Since being in South Africa, I've gotten a lot of different content recommendations on my YouTube channel, and I was able to check in with this like economic update about the country of South Africa. And it felt it felt very bleak, if I'm being transparent. And I had a hard time kind of listening to it, but as an economist, you're always kind of objective in your approach where you are just open to different insights, right? So you can't really be too emotional when you're analyzing or when you're hypothesizing, because economists all have their own theories, right? And that's exactly what we are. It's a combination of science and psychology, right? And these two contributors were, of course, what I'm typically used to saying in the economic space. Two white men. They were South Africans. And so they were speaking on the economy outlook of South Africa. And I'll link it below. And I would love to hear South Africans' feedback on it. And while many of the things that they were talking about are things that I have heard South Africans, be very critical about, and I guess as a foreigner, I have so much optimism about the opportunity and the upside that I see, which eventually kind of close out the conversation of these two men, where they did talk about really some major opportunities for the economy of South Africa. And so in this video, I really, just want to address my perspective of what I've seen so far. And, some of the things that I'll be paying attention to as we spend more time here. So if you're not new to the channel, welcome back, family. But if you are new to the channel, I'd love to introduce myself to you. I'm Ashley, and on my channel, Ashley in Africa, I talk about my experience living, moving, and doing business here on the continent of Africa. I'm also the creator of Africa Investors Academy, a community of entrepreneurs and aspiring entrepreneurs, as well as investors who are doing business, building, and growing businesses here on the continent of Africa, and investing in projects and products to eventually retire early, right? So if that sounds interesting to you, please be sure to like this channel and visit us at ashleyinafrica.com to learn more about the resources that I've created for entrepreneurs like yourself. One of the first things I want to talk about is the SME fund, right? So y'all were not playing. You went over to the website, you registered. I was able to talk to some amazing people here in South Africa. I don't think people were expecting me to actually call them back or answer their emails, but yep, that's me on the other end, walking you through whether or not you qualify for this incredible opportunity to fund your SME. But as a quick recap to that video, if you are an SME requiring payment for an invoice or an existing contract, a purchase order, you may be eligible for short-term funding through the SME Contract Finance Fund. Okay, so if you've been doing business long-term for someone and you've got a contract with them, whether it's a corporation, a university, a hospital, or the like, go ahead and visit brandupglobal.co/contact. I'll leave that also in the description below, and fill out the form so we can evaluate whether or not you qualify for this program. This is a loan program, so there aren't grants. You must repay this loan, but really favorable terms, like very favorable terms. So much so that our partners are raising money to be able to deploy more capital for SMEs like yourself. So I'll leave that link below. And if you are an SME or you know someone who is a founder of an SME looking for short-term funding, send them to brandupglobal.co. All right, so that's my plug. And going back to, this conversation that I heard about the economy, I think that kind of goes into it, right? They talked a lot about, unemployment and some of the challenges that South Africa is facing because of its unemployment. And the fact that I think the number was 8 million. Don't quote me, but again, I'll link that video below, of South Africans are receiving public grants, public assistance. And when you have a society with that amount of people receiving public money, it creates an imbalance, which we're also aware of. And so there isn't a lot of innovation happening. There isn't a lot of, problems being solved by the majority of the community when, they're not necessarily contributing to the tax benefit of the society, right? So with a small tax obligation, this community kind of is sitting in this space. Now, I am aware of the reasons of this, right? So we're not discounting that, nor are we ignoring it, nor are we not addressing it, right? I think the goal of this conversation of these two gentlemen, and also I think my goal in how I am learning and growing as an economist and somebody who is creating and wanting to create impact and economic development is looking at what are the solutions today. So what are those solutions today? And they talked about the things that make a country attractive to investment. And number one is infrastructure. Right. So infrastructure is the immediate thing that's going to attract investment. And none of these are really in order. It's just their theory. Again, the second is skills, right? So having a community of people that are talented and have a skill set to be able to push the forward innovation. Oh, my helper is in the back doing dishes. So you may hear a little bit of crackling, but we shall proceed either way. I hope to mute that out a bit. The next thing is institutional strength, right? So the fact that you have institutions like the legal system to be able to enforce contracts, because if you're doing business in a said country and there is no way to enforce a legal agreement or a contract, ooh, that wind is hitting. It's like Beyonce. Yes. And you're not willing to enforce said contracts, and you don't really have a favorable business environment. So they weren't saying this in the scope of what South Africa looks like, although they did address the fact that, the energy crisis and that's what they're calling it. Again, I think that's a bit dramatic, but having realized that this is something that the world is kind of experiencing, and there are major places that have also experienced this type of energy rationing, including the UK, including England. I think it was back in the 60s or the 70s or the 80s, something like that, right? Give me some decades to work with, where there was, that type of experience, load shedding, and this was happening for years, right? To be able to kind of prepare for innovation and what needed to happen next, right? Is it a problem that needs to be solved? Absolutely. And I think it's actively being seen, right? You have people that are learning how to adapt with alternative power sources like inverters, diesel generators, solar. And so there are businesses that are now thriving because of this economic opportunity. So, when they were speaking about other African countries that have an upside or are looking well in this season, they spoke about Rwanda, criticize the President Kagame however you may like, but they're speaking specifically on the economic advancement of a country and the stability. And again, their kind of perception of South Africa's instability with inflation, unemployment was pretty bleak. But they spoke highly of Rwanda. He kind of spoke highly of Tanzania, which was interesting, but then kind of pulled back and said he's kind of concerned about what's going on there. I'm not really sure what that is, but I also have a level of confidence in Tanzania, but it does lack some of the things that he shared that, include maybe skills and also include infrastructure. But all of these things are being developed in real time. And then Angola, he mentioned briefly. I'm not familiar enough with Angola to even speak on it, but he spoke on it. So if you want me to do more research and kind of share what that economy looks like, or maybe Angola, invite me I'd love to come and, understand more about your country. But those were the countries that he shared. And his outlook on what's next for South Africa was to recognize that we are, and I agree with him 1000% on this position, which was recognize we are living in a global economy, a global service industry, right? So with the disruption, with the disruption of trade that we've seen, with the pandemic and, production goods coming from a country that is now in conflict with many other Western countries, China, um, recognizing that we are now operating in a global service industry. And that is what we need to be looking at for this season. So, number one, being safe is a priority during this time, because when you have economic imbalances that are essentially, they're saying, are happening here in South Africa, also happening in places like the UK and the US, people, when they are insecure financially, it creates a level of chaos. And you will see what is happening currently in the US with police brutality and, all of the likes, right? Disappearing children, disappearing men and women, you know, it's a lot going on. The next thing he talked about was up leveling skill sets. One of the main reasons why we have created the Africa Investors Academy, because we are constantly sharing skills and opportunities for you to grow as an entrepreneur, aspiring entrepreneur, and an investor, right? Because being a constant learner is a huge value of mine. Being in constant personal and professional development is a personal value. And so we've created this community to share this with people, to get them through some of these hard times, collectively in a space of like minds, right? While we are all experiencing kind of these global disruptions. The next thing he said was you must have a computer and Wi-Fi to get access to information and to get access to opportunities to up level your skill sets, right? So I will say that South Africa does a great job of its connectivity. So Wi-Fi is not an issue here. You also go to any public space, there's Wi-Fi available. The gym, the grocery store, the malls, the McDonald's, the Chicken Licken, everywhere. Everybody has Wi-Fi. And I realized this when I was in Kenya, as that was also very prevalent, and it's keeping the community connected. I think what's kind of happening in South Africa is a bit different and a bit familiar, honestly, with America, and the fact that they're just constantly pushing out, I think, a level of entertainment and social media. But you can't control that. You just have to be specific about the content, right? But the fact that connectivity is available in a country like South Africa allows for this adoption of skill sets to be a bit more accessible. And so I have also seen a bunch of kind of digital media schools popping up, and, other technical schools where you're getting support with project management or digital marketing. And we're also going to be speaking to Ade Youssef, who is the founder of Alt School. I'm going to link that below. He's going to be speaking to our community in March about his founding of Alt School and what the future of work and school and studying looks like on the continent of Africa. So they're doing some amazing work. He's based in Nigeria, but he has students from all over the world that are getting access to quality and affordable education and skills that are positioning them in this, global service economy. So, saying all of that to say, these economists, with their perspective, let's not be prejudice in our assumptions of who they are. But as white men in South Africa, the likelihood of them coming, and living in the top 10% is very high. They have probably experienced a level of privilege, throughout their career and life, that now in this downturn of recession and depression, they're feeling it, right? So their position is discomfort. But I think for young people, I think people that have previously not had a voice or not had an opportunity or are looking to solve problems or have developed solutions to some of these big problems, there is a huge opportunity, especially here in the country of South Africa and for the continent of Africa, to be able to put yourself out there, start sharing your solutions online, on YouTube, start tagging the people that you want to connect with on LinkedIn, and be able to push yourself out there as a global service provider, a global expert in the work that you do, because this is a time where people that have previously not had to look for answers and solutions are looking for them. So I hope that was helpful. And, those are just some of the tips that I would recommend. But in our Africa Investors Academy, in our community, we talk about these things regularly in our monthly masterminds, our group coaching sessions, and our member only events. And if it sounds interesting to you, I would love to have you in the community. Visit ashleyinafrica.com to learn more. For South Africans, also just send me a note. I'm looking at creating a special membership option for people here on the continent, just because the pricing, I think, ultimately isn't as affordable for folks. And we want to make it affordable, and we want to make it accessible, and we want to make it so that it's people of like mind from all over the world that are invested in the growth and the ascension of Africa being the most powerful continent in the 22nd century. So I hope that was helpful. I hope you found it valuable. If so, be sure to like this video, share it with someone else who finds value in it, subscribe to our channel. And until the next video, I'll see you soon.